Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar hasn't even started, yet even Muslims that follow footballs are fed up of hearing news about the World Cup. Why? Let's take a look. The coverage of the World Cup news so far has been that Qatar is homophobic, Qatar doesn't like freedom, Qatar doesn't like alcohol, Qatar doesn't respect human rights, and Qatar is intolerant. In short, the news is telling us that Qatar doesn't believe in what we believe in and we don't like it, and we will not be happy until they believe in what we believe. Firstly, when the news tells us that Qatar doesn't like this or that, Muslims are not that easily fooled. It's not Qatar that they are addressing, they are addressing Islam. The Qatari rulers neither rule by Islam or live by Islam. However, the people that live in those lands are Muslims and they do believe in Islam. The Qatari rulers were not practicing Islam when they were giving out millions of dollars worth of bribes to FIFA officials and other officials in order to land the World Cup in Qatar. Sepp Blatter, the head of FIFA, who is accused of receiving huge amounts of bribes, when he was taking that money, alcohol, homophobia, human rights, political views, none of that was a problem then. The Qatari rulers were not practicing Islam when they were investing billions of dollars that doesn't really belong to them in the capitalist economies in the West. And for sure, the Qatari rulers were not practicing Islam when they welcomed the American Navy to have their headquarters in Qatar, whilst they brought a Karbala to Iraq and brought death and destruction to millions of Muslims in Iraq. So it is not Qatar that is being attacked. Islam is being attacked. The rulers in that region have spent billions of dollars on a vanity project that will only further secularize the Muslims in that region. If the Qatari rulers had an ounce of sincerity in them, then those countries and those teams that oppose Islamic values, they would stop them from coming to the World Cup. But it's no secret that the rulers in Qatar, just like the rulers in Dubai and just like the rulers in Najd, are building bridges with the West, whom they have more in common with in order to secure their thrones, against the Muslim Ummah, with whom they have very little in common with. So these attacks in the media are not against Qatar, and we are not fooled by that. These are attacks against Islam and against Muslims. The Qatari rulers have more in common with the West than they do with Islam. The Qatari rulers have more property in London than they do in their own land. So this is not an attack by the West against Qatar, this is an attack against Islam and the Muslims. So not for the first time, we are seeing hypocrisy dying 1,000 deaths at the hands of the West. They talk about Islam being intolerant, yet they can't tolerate a people living in a different land by different values having a difference with the West. Yet here in England, if you oppose so-called British values, like for example, normalizing homosexuality in schools, you could fall foul of terror legislation. Speaking about the British Empire and its horrors and the genocide it committed, speaking about this is frowned upon. And not only that, the current government wants to make this illegal. And Harry Kane, the English footballer, he now wants to go to another country and tell them what he thinks about their values. Yet here in Britain, anybody disrespecting British values is stopped from coming into Britain and labelled a hate preacher. And this has happened on many occasions. And Britain is so intolerant of other people having other views that they use the force of law and the might of legislation in order to indoctrinate children from different cultures into accepting their views and their values on morality and ethics. In contrast to this, non-Muslims living in an Islamic state, they are not forced to accept Islamic values and neither are they forced to abandon their religion. So who is it that is actually intolerant? And what about when they say no politics in sport? Here again we see hypocrisy dying 1,000 deaths. In the 1968 Olympics, when Smith and Carlos, two American black sportsmen, raised their fists in support of the civil rights movement in America, when they did this, the head of the OIC objected to this. They were expelled from the American team. And when they returned back to America, they and their families faced death threats. Why? Because we don't mix politics and sport. 50 years later, when American sportsmen want to take the knee in support of black rights in America, again they're faced with the same mantra: no politics in sport. When football supporters show solidarity with Palestine and wave a flag in support of Palestine, they are sanctioned for doing that, and the clubs can be fined if their supporters do that. Why? Because there's no politics in sports. However, these same rules don't seem to apply to the West when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to the Zionist state, when it comes to LGBT rights, when it comes to Poppy. Then the mantra of politics in sports is suspended. Then it doesn't apply. In 1990, when England sent a cricket team to South Africa, whilst there was an international ban on people taking part in sports in South Africa, the defense that they put up was, there's no politics in sport. So it seems that this mantra only applies when they say it applies, and it doesn't apply when they say it doesn't apply. So maybe this is what they mean by British values. So on top of the raves and the Halloween parties that we recently witnessed in the Middle East, the Qatari rulers have given an international platform for the West to come and ridicule and mock and insult Islam. So the values and principles that they claim to believe in, like no politics in sports, only apply when they say so. And when they talk about intolerance, it only seems to apply when they say so. So this is why Islamic values are superior to man-made values. Islamic values are not flip-flop values, values that apply in some arbitrary circumstance and not in some other arbitrary circumstance. Islamic values stand the test of time because they are divinely revealed and not made by men. These rulers that humiliate you and me and mock our deen, they are not fit to be goat herders, let alone being rulers. So it is we who are the final ummah who need to re-establish Islam and retake the responsibility of becoming the caretakers of this world by establishing the Khilafah to show the rest of the world, the East and the West, what justice really is and what it means to live by principles. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.